Hello everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf, and today we're going to talk about Agatha Christie and all the ones I've read so far in 2022. So normally I would make these videos every 3 Agatha Christie books that I have read, but in all honesty, 2 of the first 3 books I read in the year, they are ones I didn't really have any thoughts about that were new because I had already done videos about them. So I didn't really want to make a video saying I have no extra thoughts, but I have thoughts on this one. So we'll just go into the ones I have read so far, and we'll go over there. I should have probably saved this until after my next Agatha Christie book, but I've never made a video about that one, so we'll save that one for later, which by the way will be the 7 Dials mystery. But I have read and reviewed on my channel Death on the Nile and The Mystery of the Blue Train. And I will link those videos for you if you'd like to check out my thoughts on those 2. But we will talk about these 3. So I have The Big Four, which is a Hercule Poirot novel. We also have After the Funeral, which is also a Poirot novel. And By the Picking of My Thumbs, which is a Tommy and Tuppence novel. So I have here for 3 very different books. I have some different kind of stages of Agatha Christie's writing life, I believe. Maybe these 2, By the Picking of My Thumbs and After the Funeral, are kind of in the same era of her life. I honestly didn't check when By the Picking of My Thumbs was published, but I know that this one was in the 50s. So something along those lines. I know that this one was published just in the late 20s, I think, or yeah, late 20s. So I have interesting thoughts about these ones. And they are pretty good for the most part, but I would like to go into spoiler-free first in case anyone has never read them and would like to know what they're about without being spoiled. So the first one will be The Big Four. So this one follows 4 criminal masterminds as they are trying to take over the world, and I'm not being dramatic when I say that. But meanwhile, Hercule Poirot is coming across a couple people who are trying to communicate that, but then they suddenly seem to die, or they are very scared to say anything more. This one does follow the events, and Hercule Poirot is trying to stop them. It does say that these 4 people are 1, a powerful Oriental, which, let's say that's not quite politically correct anymore, and not great terms. 1 diabolical French scientist, 1 incredibly wealthy American, and the 4th and the most dangerous is a master murderer whose identity is cloaked in awesome mystery. That's from the back. So those are the 4 people who he's hunting down and trying to catch in order to stop this world domination. I felt like a lot of these things were racially inappropriate, but I did enjoy the idea of the mystery that was in there. And I think that at this point of Agatha Christie's writing time, I can tell that she's trying to find her footing. This is definitely not one of my favorites of her works, but you can tell that she, I think, is trying to step outside the norm for her and see where this can go. I just basically described the summary without giving any spoilers for you. I didn't tell you anything detailed, but at the same time, that's what you should probably know going in. And that's all I can say about Big Four without spoiling anything else. So the next one that I will talk about will be this one, By the Picking of My Thumb. So this Tommy and Tuppence novel, I believe, is the 3rd Tommy and Tuppence novel. I have read the last 2 aside from this one, or is this the second last one? Either way, the last one I really didn't like. And then, no, this is the second last one because I read the one before this and I really enjoyed it. So I was kind of like, do I like Tommy and Tuppence or not? And I really enjoyed this one. So this one got a 4-star from me. The other one got a 3, and that's perfectly great in my opinion. That's a good Agatha Christie book, but not a spectacular one. This one, it was really enjoyable. It follows Tommy and Tuppence as they go to visit Tommy's aunt in a home where she is very upset that Tuppence is there with him. So Tuppence goes out to talk to an elderly lady who is just sitting there all by herself when they have a strange conversation about the fireplace, and Tuppence is a little concerned. So after a few days, they try to go back, but then they find out that Tommy's aunt has passed away, so they go back to collect her things. And then they find out that the other lady has gone as well. Meanwhile, they found a painting that she had lent to, or given to Tommy's aunt. It is a very interesting mystery, and I love the nuances of it. The painting is definitely a key factor in this, as Tuppence recognizes the painting and something about it. She doesn't know why, but she recognizes something about it and she wants to find more. She's a benevolent adventurer and she does a lot of seeking out on her own for this book. I really enjoyed it and I think it's a very interesting mystery and I really like how they work as a duo all the time. This one I think definitely shows how they are not young, but at the same time they're not frail and old like the other book was, this last one, which is, let's see, Posture of Fate, which is where they were very aged and weak half the time, and the other half the time it didn't seem like they were. So this one I felt like, they were at the right age for what they were doing, but at the same time was really fun and really enjoyable. And no spoilers for previous books were in this one as well. So you can read this without reading any of the other previous books. They do talk about the events of N or M, but they don't spoil the big mystery. So that's something in case you were wondering. Then the last one was After the Funeral, and I had technically read this one before, but I hadn't actually read it because I listened to a radio drama. But I walked in and I was like, I think I know what the big reveal is. This one follows a family where they are attending basically a will reading after the death of their uncle who had no children. Well, he did have a son, but his son had passed away. So they are all now going to be the inheritors. And they are surprised and startled when their Aunt Cora suddenly stands up and says, well, he was murdered, wasn't he? And they're all shocked beyond belief because why would their uncle be murdered? But there they are. And so they all walk away thinking, was he really murdered? Who would have been? What would be the motive? All these different questions. When suddenly the next day or so, Aunt Cora is found murdered. It is a very interesting mystery and very fascinating, and it all is about what happens after the funeral of their uncle. I think it's a great way to look at a mystery, and I remembered something going in, but otherwise I think it's a really great one. I mean, not otherwise, it's a 4-star, and I think it's a really interesting way to look at a mystery whodunit. Poirot is not in here a lot, but he isn't enough to please me, and I think that's great. So, highly recommend this one as well. So we'll go to spoilers now. For the big 4, I didn't love certain elements about this, like the racially stereotyping of people, but I also really didn't love that, of course, the Chinese character would commit suicide. I felt like that was really not in his character development, but also the fact that, of course, he would because he's Asian. That just felt like really either stereotyped by Agatha Christie, but also really wrong. I also figured out pretty early into the meeting of the female scientist that she would be the French scientist and the brilliant one. And I was like, well, why couldn't it be her? And of course it was her. I also felt like throughout this whole thing, Hercule Poirot was just too, I don't know how to say it. He was just too, maybe too obvious. And I don't know why. I will say this, I was kind of settling between a 3 and a 4-star, and I landed on a 4, and it felt so wrong to put it at a 4. I don't know why it felt so wrong, but it felt wrong, so I put it at a 3 then later, and I was happy. So this is a kind of middling book for me, and I don't really do middling star ranges, but this one I think has elements that are really great, like the mystery and the key factors and having the different people be different roles, but at the same time, as you're going through the book, it literally has the same tropes kind of happening over and over again. It has different characters, but at the same time, you're just chasing these 4 villains. And because you know who these villains are, it takes away the mystery, it takes away the glam of Agatha Christie being like, who done it? Why done it? And all these questions. And it takes away that mystery element, even though this is an espionage book, essentially. I think that's what's missing in this book. And I don't love it when it's done this way. I do love her spy books in some cases, but not this way. So yeah, whenever I get to rereading Passenger Frankfurt, which I happen to really enjoy, which is a very odd opinion for most people, I'll see if I enjoy that one the same way as I enjoyed it the first time or the way I enjoyed this one, which is not much. By the pricking of my thumbs, I totally missed out on the names, which is really interesting because in this one, if you're only here for the spoilers, that's totally fine. But in this one, with the whole Lancaster, Mrs. Lancaster, Mrs. York, and having the names be opposite sides of the opposite house and having those different elements, I totally missed out on that, and I should have, because I was actually reading at the exact same time a book about the Lancasters and the York side, and I should have caught on, but I didn't. And I really love how Agatha Christie can totally fool you on that. I also thought it was brilliant how Prudence could just, or Tuppence I should say, was able to just go right in there. And I really loved actually when she was knocked out and just didn't have the memory of who she was, and she was saying, going by her married name at the hospital. That was really fun. But I will say I was really actually annoyed that the back said that in this one, I think it was this one, said that she is having tea with a serial killer. That was this one. Either way, I was really annoyed with that because I was like waiting for her to have tea with someone, and then it was finally with the old lady. I'm like, well, that sucks, because then I knew, but I was spoiled until then. So either way, I was having a good time, and I really enjoyed everything about this. The travel, it had a lot of traveling elements to and from certain areas. Tuppence had a lot of independence in this book, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing compared to the other ones. I'm not saying that, but it's definitely noticeable because Tuppence and Tommy always seem to do things together. I mean, saying that as always, and I've only read 3 of the 5 books about them, but when I've seen them, they tend to be together a lot, and I didn't really see that in this. It was a lot more of Tuppence doing the groundwork, the legwork. She was typically doing most of the things, and Tommy wasn't present much, and I really enjoyed seeing Tuppence on her own, doing her own thing, and I really liked that. For the last book, which is After the Funeral, these spoilers in here. So walking in, as soon as this started happening, I started thinking, but he wasn't murdered. I remembered that suddenly. I was like, he wasn't murdered. It was a natural death, and whatever Cora's saying is a lie. It's not true. So I knew that, and I started, like, I remembered that, and then I started thinking, but then Cora's wrong, and then what's wrong with Cora? But then also the whole time with the maid, as soon as she came on scene, I was like, she's sketchy. I didn't like her, and I knew something was off with her, and I didn't understand why I felt wrong about her. So even though I didn't predict that the maid was Cora at that opening scene, I knew something was off with her, and I also knew that Cora was lying in the opening scene. So I had that correlation from the beginning, from my first reading 5 years ago of this story, my radio drama listening, which I listened to a lot of radio dramas of Agatha Christie back then, so I'm surprised that that stuck out to me actually, of the whole mystery being revealed, and I'm surprised that I remembered that one fact. But that's all I remembered about this book. So it was really fun to meet all of the characters, see how the relationships ended up, and how all of the people benefited from Cora's death through their uncle's death, but at the same time, it was only the maid who benefited, really through that Van Gogh painting. But that's one spoiler I really picked up about this. I don't have any other thoughts really to say because I really enjoyed all of these, and I would have to probably do a deep dive into all of these books because they were really all brand new to me, and I really enjoyed this deep dive into these books. The only reason I'm not doing a deep dive into The Mystery of the Blue Train is because, in all honesty, it's not one of my favorite books, and I don't really care that much about it. Death on the Nile, I did a real deep dive into previously, so I will link that video like I said, but I am just not, I'm not gonna sit around and just repeat the same comments I made last time, so that's why I'm not gonna do that again here. But I really did love these 3, and I did talk about, I did read these, enjoy them. For the most part, the big 4, it just had some unsettling feelings for me, and it just did not end up being a 4-star worthy book. That's why I had to knock it down to 3, and I'm happy with it there. It's probably more like a high 3 if I were to do half-star ratings, which I don't, but if it were to be a half-star, it would be a 3.5 kind of idea. So it's not a bad book by any means, but I have read 5 Agatha Christie's books so far this year. And I have the Seven Dial Mystery still to go in March. So that will be hopefully reread soon. I've never reread it, and I loved it the first time around, and I gave it 5 stars. So I'm excited to reread that one, see if the joy is still there. I still remember all the key elements, the whodunit, and I'm really excited to see how it goes again. So that will be my next one to read of Agatha Christie's, and I cannot wait. So please let me know if you've read any of these Agatha Christie books, or if you have read any Agatha Christie so far this year. I know I reread Death on the Nile for the movie coming out, but I will not be doing a movie to book adaptation review because that would take too long because everything's wrong with the movie. But I'm not going to get into that here. But if you do want to get into it down in the comments, let's keep it civil because sometimes we can be a little uptight about those kind of things. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these books that I've chatted about or about Agatha Christie in general. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you've enjoyed watching, please subscribe and I will talk with you next time. Bye for now.